Welcome back to my Sunday meal preps, and today I have a very special treat for you. We are going to be making the best gluten-free lemon pound cake recipe that you have ever had. I've already preheated my oven to 325 degrees, and now I'm just taking some parchment paper and putting it into a loaf pan so that it will be ready for my cake batter when I mix it up. Whenever I started my healthy recipe section on the blog, I received a request for some gluten-free recipes, and since I'm always up for a challenge, I told this sweet person who made the request that I would do my best. This is my first crack at that very thing, and it's pretty amazing. These are the ingredients that you're going to need: sugar, eggs, vanilla extract, lemons, some gluten-free all-purpose flour, some salt, butter, and baking powder. Now the stevia that you saw in the background there is only if you want to make the sugar-free lemon glaze instead of the regular, so that's just an option. So the first thing that we need to do is to get 2 sticks of unsalted butter softened. So I just put them into a microwavable safe bowl and I let them go for about 60 seconds until they were the right consistency. Then I put that into a large mixing bowl and I'm about to add some sugar and then some other wet ingredients. This is going to be the bowl of wet ingredients. Now, I'm not going to do it here, but I want to tell you something so that you can learn from my mistake. After you add your sugar to your softened butter, go ahead and cream that together and get it completely incorporated before you add these other wet ingredients. After your butter and sugar are creamed, then you're going to add your eggs. And I am still using this trick that I learned the other day because it works so well, where you crack the eggs against one another instead of the outside bowl or the cabinet or your table, and you don't get shell in your mixture. Of course, by the time you get to the last egg, you have no option but to crack it on the side of the bowl, but it's totally okay. Now it's time to add a little bit of vanilla extract, and then we're going to begin adding our lemon zest and our lemon juice. A lot of people don't realize that a ton of that great lemon flavor is going to come from the outside of the lemon, the zest. And the way that you do that is you get a zester, and there's usually one on your cheese grater, or you can get a microplane, either way, and you're wanting to take off the yellow color of the lemon. You don't want to go all the way to the white because that part of the rind of the lemon is bitter. But if you just take off the outside of the yellow of the lemon, it is super flavorful and not bitter at all. I was struggling a little bit here because I think that my cheese grater zester section on there is kind of dull, so I'm probably going to be purchasing a new one in the very near future. So this is the first recipe, the first gluten-free recipe I think that I'm adding on the blog with that very intention. And I did it because there are some people who, they're not watching carbs, they're not watching calories, they have a medical issue and they really want something, they want to eat sweets and they want to eat desserts. And they feel left out because there are not a lot of really great gluten-free options out there. Right now I'm adding the gluten-free all-purpose flour mix that I just found at my local grocery store. By the way, this is in a separate bowl. This is our dry ingredients. So I'm going to add that to the bowl. I'm going to add a little bit of baking powder and salt, and I'm going to give that a really good mix and get it incorporated. I actually do this with my hands. And then I'm going to pour it into the wet ingredients and then mix it all together really well to make our batter. But back to this recipe. So I wanted to do this for this person, and this is the first gluten-free recipe I have on here. It's not going to be the last. But I decided to go with a lemon pound cake because lemon is one of my favorite flavors. I like lemon on just about anything, but it is definitely my favorite flavor of pound cake. It has a way of making recipes feel lighter, which is funny because that can be quite deceptive. You can take a deliciously rich cake, but you can make it lemon flavored, and all of a sudden you can eat twice the amount at one sitting. And it's the acidity that kind of tricks your mind because it cuts through the richness and it provides your palate, your mouth with a break. I don't want to get too technical into any of that, but I gave it a really good mix, got it fully incorporated, and now we're going to pour it into the loaf pan. We're going to let it bake at 325 degrees for about 45 minutes. So let me go back to this request. So when I received the request, it prompted a conversation about the gluten-free world, and it's something that I know very little about. And she just began to explain how difficult it was to find good desserts and how discouraging it was. And she specifically mentioned that she would love to have a delicious gluten-free chocolate chip cookie. So I'm going to work on that in my free time that barely exists, but that's okay. I'm going to work on that and see if I can come up with a gluten-free chocolate chip cookie that tastes like the real thing. And in that conversation about the lack of gluten-free delicious desserts, it was brought up that one of the biggest complaints is the texture, that most things are dry. Oh, let me tell you what I'm doing really quick. I'm going to make this glaze. Now, I made the regular glaze here. This is just powdered sugar, and we're going to take fresh lemon juice, and this glaze is very lemony. You can do less lemon juice if you would like, if you don't want quite as big of a punch of lemon, but I love lemon, so I just mix that together really well, and that makes a beautiful glaze. Now, I know it looks like a magic trick. All of a sudden I changed, but I was baking this cake incredibly early on Sunday morning, so I had to go get ready for church. So while it was cooking, I was doing my hair and getting ready, and then I came back. So that's why I'm completely dressed differently. So I'm taking it out of the pan and off the parchment paper, and I put it on a wire rack to cool. And then I put the parchment paper underneath it because I'm going to drizzle it with that delicious lemon glaze, and that parchment paper is going to catch any glaze that runs off the sides. So apparently texture and things being dry seem to be a major issue in the gluten-free world. So I knew that that was something I wanted to tackle. I'm going to make a cake, gluten-free or not, it can't be dry. And this recipe delivers on that promise and more. So the cake itself is incredibly moist, but the glaze on top also helps in this department. And as far as meal prep goes, this recipe is a little more decadent than the other recipes that we've been making recently, but healthy comes in all forms. And while this cake may not be the lowest calorie dessert or the lowest carb recipe, there are other health needs to consider. Some people may be interested in losing weight, while others are simply looking to enjoy foods without health complications. Whatever your healthy is, I'm sure that we'll touch on it eventually. And in the meantime, you have to make this cake.